Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Zoom into Wine. It's time for the show and your host, Ian Blackburn.
There may be a face in this crowd, but you're a happy face from me. Thank you guys for joining. I hope you guys enjoy our evening. I'm just making sure everybody's getting on the Zoom tonight. And we've got a really nice group. Hopefully everybody can see each other. There's a little chat box down at the bottom. Greg Gura, how are you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you, Ian?
Greg is with the charity that we work with. And Greg has posted the auction site. If you haven't seen it yet, Greg, anything super special up there this time?
Well, since you kind of had a theme going, I think I put together an auction that's very Australian, New Zealand centric. There's some sports guys there that are from New Zealand. We have Keith Urban, a very cool CD from him. He's, of course, from Australia. And we have 5 very cool wine lots. So check it out. Auction runs till tomorrow night at 9 p.m.
Cool. And all the dollars go to Children's Hospital Los Angeles for children's cancer research.
Yep.
And Greg has been helping me with that for a long time. Greg, where are you tonight?
I am in Los Angeles, heading down tomorrow to Orange County to work on the Pearl Jam concert for the next 2 weekends.
Poor guy. So Greg and I know each other from TJ Martell Foundation, which was really involved in the music industry, founded by Tony Martell from Sony Music. And we worked together with TJ Martell until TJ Martell closed with the COVID situation. Any word on if they're coming back, Greg?
I have no idea. I know they're holding steady until this all passes. Unfortunately, they were very very event heavy. And, until events can come back safely, I think they're just kind of holding right now.
Understood. Well, some of the group that works with us there have their own foundations, and we're able to borrow theirs to get the money to the charity, and they're being very generous at helping us with that. Tonight, we're doing something very different, and I want to thank everybody for joining us on such a unique gathering. We've got our very traditional stars of Cabernet, stars of Pinot Noir, stars of California, stars of Napa Valley, and they're usually staying in one lane. We're cruising on many different highways on this particular event, going from New Zealand to the Russian River to the Margaret River, and then we're going to head also down to New Zealand again for some Pinot Noir. Let's see, I think we're in Central Otago down there, and then we're over back in Australia with some Shiraz from a place called Heathcote, and then we'll be in the Napa Valley tasting a great wine, and it's kind of a cross of different grape varieties. But the way this event works for us structurally is that we get the wineries on board, and we do a lot of work for them with the trade tasting. We had just an incredible group earlier today, retailers, top press, and some really good restaurateurs, hotels, wine bars on the Zoom. And they did this for professional reasons. And now we get to do it for charity and with you guys. And it's just a really wonderful combination of efforts. So I want to thank all the producers for joining us and being on the Zoom, and let's get rocking. And we'll encourage lots of comments. I want you to be a part of this event. I've watched some other Zooms where you're just kind of like watching a program. It might as well be pre-recorded. But here tonight, I really want you to be a part of it. Have an opinion, ask questions. There's no question too high, too low, too outside the box. Where's my buddy Van Tuck? Is he out there? Van, is your group out there? Van's got like 8 people getting together around some bottles. David Cam, good to see you again. Susan French, fantastic. Mr. Ramirez, always good to have you. Ryan, I played that song for you, buddy. Always great to have you on the Zoom, Ryan.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it very much, and I'm looking forward to tonight.
Thank you very much. Ryan was he is Tom Petty's producer, so how cool is that? And we've got Lisa Test and Sue Green. Fun, fun. And we've got Setsuko again. I always want to thank her for joining us from Japan. How cool is that to have somebody on the Zoom from Japan? And I know some of you else are not on camera, but when you are on camera, I'll call you out. Hey, Jackie Nemor, how are you? You've been with us before, right?
I have been. This is my third time, and I want you to know how much fun this has been. So I keep back, and I love Australian wines. I haven't had New Zealand wines, so I'm very excited about tonight.
Oh,
thank you.
That's great.
Very much.
That's great. Carlos, I see your name.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm looking forward to tasting all these wines. I can't wait.
All right.
I love Sauvignon Blancs from New Zealand. So
all right, where are you sitting today, Carlos?
I'm sitting at my bedroom, and I have a desk here, and all my wines are lined, ready to.
What part of the world, though? Just I didn't.
Oh, I'm in Pasadena. I'm in Pasadena here in Los Angeles County.
All right, cool, fantastic. Well, I think the rest are wine professionals on our Zoom. And Van, how you doing, buddy? I see you're paying attention there now, almost. All right, let's get going. We're gonna go down for our first taste, and hopefully everybody got their tasting kits or bottle kits, and you can taste along with us. But if not, there's special pricing for people that are on our Zoom tonight. We have a really cool incentive for you guys to buy some wine this evening. There'll be an email in your inbox at 8 o'clock tonight. If you didn't get it, just let me know and I'll forward it to you again. I think some of you aren't getting the email because we send them out from different email addresses, and that could be a little bit of a problem, so I apologize for that. Sue, I'm sorry if that happened to you or anyone else, Susan. But we are excited, so let's get started, and really exciting to have a little change tonight. We got the winemaker from Sarason to stay up late. Is it late there in New Zealand?
Actually, it's okay. It's like 2 PM, so it's pretty good. It's about wine o'clock, I think.
Fantastic. And I'm just going to spotlight you. Is your accent pure New Zealand?
Well, interesting you say that, because I get asked that question a lot. I've worked a lot overseas, I suppose, and my husband's English, so yeah.
I get a little of that. My family's from England, so I hear a little bit of my aunt in your voice. Well, pleasure to meet you, Tamara.
Likewise, Ian, and everybody there.
And how long have you been associated with Sarason?
It's an interesting story, because when I was a very green, just straight out of university, young budding winemaker, I did my first ever vintage at Sarason back in 1999. Actually, I did 2 vintages in a row. I did one at Sarason, then I went over to Napa to do a vintage, as young winemakers do,
right?
Trying to get as much experience as possible. Then I came back to Sarason.
That way, huh?
So yeah, that was sort of like my introduction to the wine industry, and then I went off and I've worked in Italy and Europe and lots of areas of Australia as well. And then I came back to Sarason at the very start of 2018. So I've just completed my 4th vintage back at Sarason. So it was a really nice kind of full circle situation for me, having started there my career and actually being very enamored with the estate and the whole philosophy and the quality and everything. So it's been great.
I have loved these wines pretty much my entire wine buying career, which isn't that long. But I sold wine for others for a very long time before I started buying it. And there's many great wineries in New Zealand, but I've always been really appreciative of the style here. So let's get into our presentation and get a glass on and say let you take it away from here. I'm not sure if you've been through the PowerPoint presentation. I know that you came into this.
Actually, I haven't been able to. I haven't managed to.
All right, we'll work
coming in
together.
late, but that's okay if you.
Yeah, you know all this stuff, and you know, of course, we're looking here at New Zealand. And are you sitting in Swirl right now?
Actually, it's a funny time. You might have heard we're back in lockdown, but I'm based on Waiheke Island, which wow. I can't even see on the map. There you go. You've got it there. Yeah. So we form a part of the Auckland region, and we're in quite a strict lockdown. Auckland, the rest of the country are kind of lifting restrictions. So I commute down to Marlborough quite regularly. But for now, I've been sort of stuck up in Auckland, Waiheke, the last couple of months.
That's cool. It's a little bit like a tropical island up there. I like it up
yeah, it's a wonderful place, and you know, on Waiheke there's great wines. It's a great wine community as well. But I think that's the wonderful thing about New Zealand, right from the bottom of the South Island, Central Otago, and I see you have an Amersfoort wine, which is fantastic. You know, Pinot Noir. Coming up through the South Island, you know, North Canterbury, Marlborough, Nelson, then to the North Island, we just have such a breadth of different varieties, different styles, different terroirs. I think we can pretty much within New Zealand say we can make just about anything, which is pretty exciting. And also an exciting time at the moment because, you know, obviously it's traditionally been a lot of Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Noir. And getting into sort of Syrah, Cabernet, Bordeaux blends from the North Island, Chardonnay. But now lots of winemakers are really experimenting with different varietals, you know, things, great Rieslings being produced, other whites, Pinot Blancs. Oh, there's my boss. That was probably a picture of Michael taken when I first worked at Sarason, you know, 20 something years ago. But just a bit of a background. Michael Sarason, he's a New Zealander, born and bred in Wellington, but left New Zealand in his early 20s to forge his way in the film industry. So he went to Italy and started working on various projects there, and then up to London, has been based over in London since then, some time ago now. But Michael has always had a real love affair with great, you know, food and wine produce in Italy. So he bought a property in Italy and used to travel down to Tuscany and was really in love with the wine. And then on a trip home to New Zealand, he thought, wow, he just really wanted to put some roots back down in New Zealand in the form of buying a land and planting vines, which he did in the early 90s. But super lovely guy. I mean, Michael now is, you know, in his 70s, but still extremely involved and passionate. And he pretty much looks like that now still. I said to him, whatever you're having, can I have some too? Because you just don't seem to age. But I think definitely a lover of great food and wine, and organic produce really is something that is Michael's huge philosophy.
He's one of the. Is that kind of how he got started? He really wanted to see, you know, organic become more important there.
Absolutely. I mean, New Zealand back in the 90s, the early 90s, there wasn't really such a kind of food movement, or really what people weren't really drinking a lot of wine. So when Michael went back there, he really wanted to help change that. And he purchased a fantastic site in the Wairau Valley of Marlborough, Upper Wairau, beautiful kind of river terrace plains, and planted. And I think within the first year or two, he started to convert to organics. So Michael was really one of the first in New Zealand to farm his vineyard organically, and quickly went on to have the whole vineyard run organically and also certified, and that followed on with biodynamic certification with Demeter. So this was really kind of running through the whole culture of Sarason, not only making the best wines we could, but also organically and biodynamically. Another thing about Michael, which was really interesting back in that time in New Zealand, there's a beautiful picture looking out from the winery, which is the sort of the older vineyard now, is that Michael's absolute passionate about Pinot Noir. So he planted quite heavily in Pinot Noir, which back then was quite unusual for Marlborough. Marlborough was just thought of as Sauvignon Blanc, but there was Michael wanting Pinot Noir and actually Chardonnay as well. But now, of course, you know, so Pinot Noir has really taken off in Marlborough, and there's some fantastic Pinots being produced, of which we produce some, and Chardonnay too. Mm-hmm. But tonight we're drinking Sauvignon Blanc, aren't we? So just a little bit about Momo. What was that? Sorry?
And we're tasting Momo, which is maybe not as prevalent as the Sarason brand might be in some people's head, but I'd love to distinguish the difference between what Momo is and the other, and also just stylistically kind of geek out on it a little bit, because it's not your typical style.
No. I call Momo kind of like the baby Sarason. It's a real kind of introduction to, or the first introduction to Sarason. It's still 100% organic certified. With Momo, though, we use some of our fruit from our estate. You have a beautiful picture of our Raupo vineyard there, and that particular block there is our Pinot Noir. We have Pinot Noir planted on all the clay slopes, which is fantastic dirt for Pinot. We also goes down into a lot of the sort of flatter, more even areas where we have our Sauvignon Blanc planted. But we also source a little bit of fruit from some organic growers for our Momo. So I think with Momo, we really want to kind of produce a Sauvignon that comes back to the classic Marlborough Sauvignon, but still with kind of more texture. And we look all through our Sarason wines to kind of bring a little bit of that dirt through to the wine. We're quite mindful with what we do. We use a lot of the lees, which is kind of the solid material from the grape, to really give a lot of layers and texture and kind of to naturally soften the wine. So we're not working with quite, you know, big acidities as some Marlborough Sauvignons can, which are fantastic, but it's actually also quite nice to have more of a kind of gentle Sauvignon as well. It's a little bit slightly riper with some lovely ripe fruit, but then you have your lovely kind of greens when you have more sort of that ripe herbaceous kind of character coming through, and just the beautiful length of that kind of really soft acidity.
Does the lees, time on lees, help knock down the nose a little bit and make it not quite as like tropical and cat's pee, but a little bit more? You know,
and I think a big thing is with our organic growing is naturally we get lower yields, and I think also the sites where we have our Sauvignon are in areas that are not in that. There's particular areas of Marlborough which really emphasize that full-on, that smell that when you smell the Sauvignon, you're like, yes, that's Marlborough. And that's a great thing, but that's not something we're necessarily looking for, because we're always going to get a bit of that anyway, just being a Marlborough. Mm-hmm. But with the lees work, we want to bring in some more savory aspects. Certainly with our Sarason Sauvignon, which is wholly from our estate. Now, this is made with a lot of lees. It's made with oak barrels. It's made keeping those components longer in the winery to really help bring in the savory notes that we love. Momo, again, classically made is bottled a little bit earlier, like some of your majority of Sauvignon Blancs are bottled early to preserve some of the fruit and cleanliness. So the Momo is just fermented in stainless steel. But as I said, still with lees work, and kind of a little bit of time, not as much as with the Sarason, but time just to kind of let things soften naturally. Yeah.
Now, to become biodynamic and certified organic and all of the designations takes time and commitment and a lot of practices that at the same time it's a lot of work just to get the setup to receive that accommodation, that award, but it also starts to change the behavior of your vineyard and your fruit and results, right? And you know,
absolutely.
No more pesticides or herbicides or sprays, but more more the footprint of the winemaker walking through the vineyards, and more time in the vineyards of the staff just to maintain things, and so this and this the natural balance that you guys have, and you have to have your own ecosystem basically to be able to keep it biodynamic so that your neighbors aren't influencing your own vineyard practices.
That's right. And it's something that really you need kind of buy-in from everybody that works on the estate, which we do, thankfully, because it's not easy and it takes a lot more time, and everything's a lot more sort of hand-tended, and it's working with the rhythms of the seasons, a lot more nature, not just thinking about it as a vineyard, but thinking about all of the different cover crops that you can use, and insects and flowers and all sorts of things, which to me is a really nice way to farm, I think, for anything that you want to grow. But I think over time, which has been something really interesting for me, is seeing how, I mean, we've had a few kind of challenging seasons in Marlborough, and there's some different disease that has come through, especially with Chardonnay, a little bit within the region, but just the resilience of our fruit, it's amazing. The organically farmed fruit is just so resilient, and I don't know, it seems like tougher, thicker skins, just looks healthier and can kind of get through those challenging seasons. So for me, I mean, of course, it does cost a lot more to do this, and it's more time, and you get lower yields and things, but you're getting the quality is just, there's no question, and just the wines just feel, and fruit, it feels alive. There's a real kind of tension and energy to not only tasting the fruit as we're working out when we're going to harvest, but also the wines. You can really feel this. So that's really exciting for me.
Tamara, is this a horse-drawn buggy here? Is he pulling tea through the vineyard? Is that what that is? Some of the.
Do you know that the horses aren't there anymore, and I think they trialed with them before my time,
Okay.
but then they found it a bit difficult to manage. There was a whole other side of things they had to manage with keeping horses. But the idea was pretty cool. And yeah, I'm figuring that it's some sort of organic spray or tea or something like that, as you said. Yeah. Looks great. Yeah.
And
this is
here's oak and stainless steel, and how much, what percentage is there any wood in the Momo program at all?
Not in the Momo program. Just 100% stainless steel, but again with the lees work. But all of us, we may actually make 2 other Sauvignon Blancs under the Sarason hat. Our Sarason Sauvignon, which has a percentage of oak, not any new oak really, just a lot of, maybe depending on the year, kind of 20 to 25% older oak, or 100% wild fermentation as well. And then it goes through malolactic fermentation. And so it's also got a bit of Semillon included. We grow Semillon, and it just creates this really unusual, very unique Marlborough Sauvignon. You would taste it and you wouldn't put it as Marlborough, but it could be something from the Loire, or so definitely a softer expression and more savory and textural. And then we make 100% barrel fermented, very small quantity called marama, which means moon in Maori language. It's a name that Michael really likes. And that's so interesting because it's made solely like a Chardonnay. So you still got the Sauvignon is there, but there's just so much more going on. Mm-hmm. And to me, this is what's exciting about Marlborough in general, not just with what we do at Sarason, but a lot of producers are actually really experimenting with Sauvignon Blanc and doing some pretty cool things to try and really create these wines that are not your classic Marlborough Sauvignon, to really push it to see what it can do.
Mm. Well, the Momo's been a big success around here. It does carry a little lighter price than the full Sarason. It's called Momo, but it's a little less.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you can look around and find it around. It has been on our website for the past year and a half, and will continue to be. In fact, right now, just to kind of come to a conclusion here, New Zealand's had some difficult vintages, with 21 being very difficult. Hopefully 22 will be a better one, and that's coming up in March of next year. But 21, did you make anything or a little?
And 21, yes, we did. But of course, there's, as you said, the last couple of vintages we've been very tight on what we've made, really small quantities.
Good wine, but small amounts.
In particular with the Sauvignon, I mean, great quality's been through the roof, amazing, but just really limited. Sorry, I've just got small children coming to.
They can say hi.
Yeah, this is Clover.
Hey, Clover. Hi. We're talking to you from California, from Los Angeles.
From America. Yeah.
Yeah.
Normally she would be at kindy, but of course with lockdown, I've got a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old at home.
Wowzer. You got your hands.
Yeah, so no, we have made, just to answer your question again, we have made some lovely wines, and our quantity, but certainly down, and that's been the trend. The whole of Marlborough, it's actually been quite significant. So we're really hoping for next vintage that we're going to have a decent quality, but also a decent crop as well.
We'll just add to the fact that you don't have a lot of quantity, and then we put in the container crisis. There is no Sarason in the state of California right now. So that's one of the reasons why we're showing Momo, is because
yes.
I had it, and we could. So I just bought a big chunk of it right before the container crisis really started to strike. And so I still had some, but I don't think you're going to find it anywhere out in the market, really, in the kind of supply that we had. And now it's almost gone. But if you like the wine, I will be buying Sarason when it lands again, and I'm like every day I'm checking, because it's supposed to land here in California any moment. But that's
yes.
like every wine in the world, and as soon as these wines come in, there's a lot of pent-up demand, and they go. There's a lot of hoarding and buying. People are afraid of running out. So it's a really different wine buying world than it was even just a year ago.
Yes,
It's quite interesting. So I want to thank you for being on the Zoom. We appreciate you being with your kids there. So thanks for joining us. It's always nice to hear from the winemaker, and a wonderful place to start off. Tonight we're going to be tasting another Sauvignon Blanc. We're now going to go up to Sonoma. And Tamara, have a good night.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Really nice to see you all. Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Fantastic. We're going to head over and talk to Brown now, who is representing... we're going to be up in Sonoma now with Mary Edwards Winery. Now, Mary Edwards, winemaker, legendary winemaker, she retired in 2020, and Brown is representing the estate. How are you tonight, Brown?
Very well, Ian, and thank you for having us. It's good to be with you again.
Now, Brown's accent is not from Sonoma either. He's one of the few Nigerians in the wine industry. We were talking about this earlier. It's very cool. And how long have you been up in Sonoma now, Brown?
I've been in Sonoma for about, I think about 14 years. So I will have to actually insist that this is a Santa Rosa accent. Whatever the people have to say, this is it. So
all right, I'll try to bend there. I think it could be good for Santa Rosa.
Exactly.
Let's go through Mary Edwards. Always one of my favorite producers. I used to kind of be a little bit of a Mary Edwards stalker back in the day, as I worked at Kenwood back in the 1990s, and we had one thing in common with Mary Edwards. We had a label made by David Lance Goins. He's the artist from like the early 1970s, Woodstock posters, and in 1978 Kenwood made the artist series with a couple of naked ladies, and it got banned, and it was a big story. Well, he made the label for Mary Edwards and many other great wineries, and so I've always really appreciated the label.
Yeah, absolutely. And David and Mary, their friendship go back to the late 60s when Mary was doing her undergraduate at Berkeley, at UC Berkeley.
Crazy.
Yeah, and that's where she and David and Alice Waters all became friends.
Wow.
And, years later, as she was starting her own label, Mary Edwards, launching it in 1998, 1997, 1998, she reached out to David for the label. And at the time, of course, her intention had been just to focus on Pinot Noir. After 25 years of making wine, her colleagues had begun to call her the queen of Pinot Noir. And that's Mary on the right side, holding the cat in the picture. And next to her is our current winemaker, Heidi von der Maiden, who actually has history going back to Kenwood. In fact, I believe after she finished school more than 20 years ago, her first job in the lab was at Kenwood.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So Heidi now has is in her third decade of winemaking. But when Mary was starting the winery, she intended to make nothing but Pinot Noir. And with the intention being to make Pinot Noir from only one AVA or appellation, AVA, American Viticultural Area, in this case being Russian River Valley. But because of her reputation in the previous 25 years, having in the late 70s been the founding winemaker for Matanzas Creek, which is in Bennett Valley, also here in Sonoma County, and where she immediately, from 1977, made the reputation of that new winery with her Sauvignon Blanc and her Merlot, Chardonnay, and Cabernet. People had come to know her for her Sauvignon Blanc. So in 1997, when she announced that Mary Edwards was going to be solely a Pinot Noir winery, people, her fans, would not allow that. And after 4 years of arm twisting, in 2002, she began making Mary Edwards Sauvignon Blanc. And that really turned everything around. And I think, ironically, the one wine she did not intend to make for Mary Edwards wound up being the wine that allowed her, in fact, the luxury of making the Pinots precisely how she wanted to make them, because the Sauvignon Blanc provided this freedom financially to be able to focus on doing her Pinots precisely how she wanted to do the Pinots. And of course, she is known as the queen of Pinot Noir, and some would say the Tsarina of Sauvignon Blanc also. And so what the Sauvignon Blanc has become, the picture we're looking at actually is Nicole Carter, who is our winery president now. As Ian had mentioned, Mary retired in 2020. She had sold the winery in 2019 to Roederer Champagne. So we are now owned by Roederer Champagne. And Nicole joined us in 2019 and is now the president of the winery, and along with Heidi, the winemaker, and Heidi has been at Mary Edwards since 2015. So
that's kind of the dream of someone like Mary Edwards, is to be able to retire in that type of situation and leave it with in such good hands.
Precisely. And if you know anything about Mary, and as you mentioned, you were a stalker, and you were one of many. Believe me, she has many stalkers. She is so precise and careful about what she does that she would not leave her legacy in the wrong hands. And that's exactly what she did with Roederer, and bringing in Heidi some 5 years before she retired, and bringing in a veteran winemaker in the person of Heidi to take over making the wines. So right now, Heidi is only the second person ever to make Mary Edwards Winery, and the only person besides Mary Edwards herself to make Mary Edwards Winery. And she has continued to go from strength to strength. The Sauvignon Blanc, since the mid 2000s, when finally it began, it caught on, with the press and with the consumers, has remained the highest rated Sauvignon Blanc year in, year out, all the way through to this 2019, which we are tasting this evening. The 2019 in May, when Wine Spectator released their Sauvignon Blanc issue, was the highest rated Sauvignon Blanc by them. The tasting panel, also their highest rated Sauvignon Blanc. Antonio Gaglione in Venice. So it's always year after year, we see the highest press acclaim for this wine. But more importantly, is the acclaim that comes from the consumers for this wine. Because this is a wine that I travel all over California and the country to do events and consumer or private events on behalf of the winery. And I have learned not to show up anywhere without the Mary Edwards Sauvignon Blanc. It doesn't matter whether the event is devoted to Pinot Noir, because people will hold my feet to the fire if I fail to show up without the Sauvignon Blanc. So we are very, very grateful for that support from consumers, restaurants, wine shops. So the 2019, which is the current one, and I think with its bread and all the Sauvignon Blanc, Mary Edwards Sauvignon Blanc that have gone before it, speak about place. And that place is Russian River Valley. Everything that we produce, except for our Sonoma Coast Pinot Noir, all the other 9 Pinots, this Sauvignon Blanc, our one Chardonnay, are all from Russian River Valley. And I think for people tasting the Sarason, the Momo, and tasting this, what you're getting is the expression of the same vehicle, Sauvignon Blanc, but bringing through 2 different places on our planet. And, there are similarities, but at the same time, because of the care and attention in the winemaking, which in fact, I should be calling wine growing, you get to have these express the place of their birth. And that is what this Sauvignon Blanc is about. A lot more here, we are talking about tropical and white stone fruits. And as I mentioned earlier today during our trade tasting, for me as a West African, this 19, similar to the 2011, which was the first Sauvignon Blanc when I started at Mary Edwards, reminds me very much of what I now call white pineapple, but which when I was growing up, I simply called pineapple, because the pineapple in West Africa is white when you cut into it with a very clean, crisp flavor. And this reminds me so much of that. A lot of white flowers on the nose. And then you do get some of the citrus-driven components of Sauvignon Blanc, but with the texture that is uncommon for this variety. And that comes from the care and attention given to this wine with the least stirring that takes place usually for about 4 to 6 months in the wine. The wine is also 100% barrel fermented, something that is also uncommon in the making of Sauvignon Blanc. As Tamara had described, the Momo is in stainless steel, but this is all in barrels, but primarily and mostly used barrels, so neutral, used to neutral barrels, and only 18% of which is new barrels. So that's what gives it the texture and the complexity, the layering of flavors that we get from the Sauvignon Blanc.
Excellent. Well, any questions about the Mary Edwards Sauvignon Blanc or comments from anyone that you're tasting it? Have anyone tried it before? Um, this is just something that I used to adore putting on the wine list. They make it in a cute little half bottle. It's also just a really beautiful package to gift out. And stylistically, I think this is kind of a standout in California winemaking. When we were talking about Sarason about Sauvignon Blanc, I said kind of Bordeaux because they use Semillon in Bordeaux. They don't use any Semillon in this wine, but they do use some oak barrel, and that's also a common thing in Bordeaux. And so it's kind of a fun platform, Sauvignon Blanc. It really shows off its place. And what do you guys think about it?
I completely agree. I mean, it's layered. It's got structure. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah. Ryan, do you have a comment there, buddy?
Yeah, I was just going to say. I mean, I was telling my wife that if I did a blind tasting, I don't think I would say this. I wouldn't know what this is. I would kind of even go more Rhone in a weird way, but because it doesn't have that kind of that cat thing that you kind of expect with it. It's a really lovely wine, and it's a really lovely expression of this.
Yeah. And Ryan, I should say that actually was something that Mary wanted to avoid. That cat pee, like you were describing, or the green herbaceous components of Sauvignon Blanc. At Matanzas Creek in the late 70s, she wanted to make a Sauvignon Blanc that she would like, because she didn't want those kinds of aromatic and flavor components. She found those off-putting just as a wine consumer, and wanted something that she would like, and thinking that Sauvignon Blanc is a neglected noble grape, especially in North American winemaking. At that time, she set about to redeem and restore it to its proper place. And with, of course, somebody like Robert Mondavi, who back then was making a very serious Sauvignon Blanc, but felt that there was not a market for it, that he did the radical thing of coining a new name for it, Fumer Blanc, just to be able to present it in the market. So that you're absolutely right in terms of that. And I should mention, in terms of the flavors that you were talking about, a third of the grapes that go into this wine is a particular clone of Sauvignon Blanc called Musqué. And that is where you get that aromatic and that floral aromatic lift, and the white flowers, or sort of that Rhone, components that you will be getting, say, out of Viognier, or even something like Picpoul de Pinet in this wine.
Very good. Thank you so much, Brown. And Kim, thank you for joining us. Kim is with Mary Edwards, and she's on the Zoom too. And if anybody has any comments or questions, this wine's on on the website now and will be forever. So thank you guys for joining us. And I'm so proud to carry this wine, because I think it's just, once people taste it, you'll think about it, you'll want to come back and get some more, and I'll have it. Okay. So thank you guys very much. We want to now, we're going to turn our energies back to down under. We're going to head all the way down under to the edge of the planet. We're going down to Margaret River. So from the Russian River to the Margaret River. And I don't know if anybody's been to Western Australia. I did get to take a group there about 10 years ago, and was incredible. Nobody on the brochure, we had all these ideas what we would see, what we would do. Nobody told me that there was such a thing as fly season down there. So I will warn you, about middle of November, they have the craziest number of flies, and it takes a couple of weeks for things to balance out. But we had to wear the beekeeper helmet when we were out in the vineyards and outside in the forest, etc. they take their fly season very seriously. Of course, everybody knows in Australia, anything that's poisonous in America is about 5 times more poisonous in Australia. So of course the flies are a little more aggressive down there too. But we are going to Lewin Estate, and this is just a tremendous property. And let me get my notes here. Let's make my proper introduction.
And we've been to the Lewin Estate, and we had a wonderful lunch there. Many years ago, we were staying for several days in the Margaret River area, which is absolutely beautiful. And we had lunch at a different winery every day. But Lewin was one of our very favorites. So we shipped home a case of their Chardonnay at that time, which because of the exchange rate, even the shipping made it less expensive than buying a Chardonnay in California.
You got a deal, absolutely.
That would have been a good deal. There was a day when the U.S. dollar to us Aussie dollar was crazy. I don't think it's crazy anymore.
No, it was for a long. Yeah, I mean, so I'm Gavin Spate here. I can't even see. I don't know if you can see me at all, but I'm
there. You are, Gavin. I'm going to highlight you right now.
As long as I'm here, okay. So I'm a sand groper. I'm a West Australian, but I'm also a proud Nappan. I've been living here in Napa for 20 years, or the Bay Area for 20 years. So I'm both. I've got 2 feet in both camp. But the dollar, as Ian said and someone else mentioned, got very scary for us. We import Lewin. I've been representing Lewin here for 20 years, and all of a sudden the dollars were equal. So that that makes things very expensive to ship wines around the world. But we're back in a normal sort of sense now. So Lewin should be a lot more affordable for you today. But I guess I'm launching into this, Ian.
Yeah, no problem. Let's continue.
Okay,
we're running a little bit behind schedule, which is a little common for us, but
I'll keep it rocking along. And
thanks, Gavin.
I'm sitting here in Napa, and I've got Cale, who's a good mate of mine. He's probably on the line too somewhere. But we both smell smoke here. Unfortunately, the thing we dread in Napa is smoke, and we've got our first whiff of smoke this season. I think it's got a little fire over in Sonoma, but hopefully they've got it under control. So we'll just cross our fingers. Anyway, so Margaret River, I'm from Perth. Margaret River is 3 hours from Perth. It's about the most furthest location you get from America. You have to fly 12, 14 hours from the west coast to Sydney. You get another flight to Perth for 5 hours, and then you drive. But go back 50 years. Can you imagine doing that on, I don't know, a dinky old Pan Am plane or a Qantas? Qantas wasn't too bad in those days. But 50 years ago, Robert Mondavi from Napa here got on a plane on behalf of a consortium of people here to go and find the greatest grape growing district in the Southern Hemisphere. And he ended up at this wild sort of crazy peninsula called Margaret River. And he said, I reckon this is where we're going to make some of the greatest wines in the world. And there was a particular site he liked, and it turns out it was owned by an accountant up in Perth, which is the capital of Western Australia. Mind you, remember in Australia, our distances are a bit different to most. I mean, Western Australia is the size of California, Texas, Florida put together. It's a third of the state of the country. It's a very big state. So we're talking about the very southernmost western corner. And if you go south, you hit Antarctica. You go west, you hit South Africa. So it's pretty wild. And he said this is the greatest spot to grow premium fruit. And he knocked on the door of this guy, Dennis Horgan in Perth. Dennis Horgan had no idea in 1970 who Robert Mondavi was. And he said to him, I want to buy your farm or your ranch. And this guy, Dennis Horgan, said, well, hang on, why do you want to buy my ranch? He said, well, I think it's a very good grape growing area. And before this, all that Margaret River was known was for surfing, hippies, and some farmers. So there's nothing much going on down in this area of the world. But over a long boozy dinner, as Australians are very good with their boozy dinners, Mr. Horgan convinced Mr. Mondavi that why don't I just keep my land? I'll plant some vines and you help me do it. And so for some reason, Robert Mondavi signed on to be the mentor for one of the newest developments in Australia in an area that no one had ever really grown grapes in 1970. So that's how Lewin started. And what the great thing Mondavi said as he was rising to fame here in America, he told Dennis Horgan, look at the great wines of Burgundy, look at the great wines of Bordeaux. They should be your benchmarks. And that's what he did. And so he planted Chardonnay, he planted Cabernet Sauvignon, two unlikely bedfellows in the same region, I know. But they work down there because it's a very maritime, a very sort of a temperate sort of climate. So for some reason, we've got these very old decomposed granite soils, and it works very well for both Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon. The Art Series Chardonnay that Lewin's very famous for, probably regarded as the most famous Chardonnay in Australia, in 1980, beat out a lot of the great Grand Crus of Burgundy in a decanter best of for the year, and was ahead of these great Puligny Montrachets and so forth. And that really put Lewin on the map. And since then, Lewin's become one of the benchmarks of the world Chardonnay winemaking. Tonight, we're showing you their junior version, which is, junior in that sort of sense means you're going from a Grand Cru to a Premier Cru. It's not such a shabby sort of downgrade. And the thing about these wines is that they have all the energy and richness of Australia, but they have this sort of very beautiful line of thread of acidity and freshness that makes you want to come back for more. And I think that's the beauty of something like a Margaret River Chardonnay compared to some other parts of the world where Chardonnays can get a little too boisterous, a little too heavy, and it's pretty hard to go, drink more than one or two glasses. So that's what's sitting in front of you right now. And
let's check in with people there, Gavin, and find out how people are enjoying the wine here real quick. And if you're in that glass, David, Cam, Susan French, Ryan, what are you guys thinking?
Well, it's a wine that I like very much. I have for 20 some years, and I still like it.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
And you tasted Artist Series before, and it's reminiscent, right? It's got a very similar approach.
What we bought was a case of the Art Series, which had absolutely gorgeous labels as well. I'm just remembering, I think it was the year 2002 that we were there.
Mm.
Right. Well, every year the Art Series has a different famous Australian artist. Dennis Horgan took a leaf out of Mouton Rothschild's book and sort of features a great Aussie artist. And in fact, the first year he did this in 1980 or 81, one of the great artists, I think it was another Ian Blackburn. Well, no, who was it? Ian, I've gone blank on his name, but he said, unfortunately, Mr. Horgan, I don't let my art go on to wine labels. I'm a professional artist. And Dennis Horgan sent him two cases of the Chardonnay, and he came back and said, well, for that, I'll give you one of my pieces. So that's how he got. And the funny story is, what Dennis Horgan learnt was being in the most remote part of the world to make wine. No one's going to know about Margaret River in 1975 or 1980, whenever. And he said, we've got to do something to change this. And again, he said, we should start doing art and restaurants like someone suggested, but also music. And he's now has one of the greatest music festivals of Australia, going to Lewin each year. And the first year, he wanted the London Philharmonic. And they'd never played out of London before in their lives. And they said to him, Mr. Horgan, we're a professional philharmonic, we're an orchestra. We do not play in the bush, meaning we do not play in the forest. And but after a certain cajoling back and forth, he convinced them, and they had their first ever concert outside of the UK in a forest in Australia with kookaburras in the background. And so that sort of set the scene of what Lewin was all about. And it's really gone from strength to strength.
I will say personally, when I went and visited, first of all, it's incredible, gorgeous place. but you really are on the edge of the world, and looking out at the ocean, and there's like an unknown out there. It's just so pure and raw, and so we're in the winery, and down in Australia and many parts of the southern hemisphere, if you go to the winery, it's probably got a world-class restaurant there.
Right.
And Lewin Estates, just beautiful restaurant sitting up, perched up on a hill, looking out on this natural amphitheater that they've created for the music acts. There's a beautiful stage there. I think maybe it was set up just for the time of year when we were there. Maybe they're going to have a show, and and just as we're sitting down to eat, it's about to have like an incredible burst from the sky of rain and hail, and everything was going to be coming down, and like anything that was alive, and whether it was in the trees or the vineyards or the grass or everything, just flew up into the air. Like everyone was like, "Get the hell out of here!" and like all these bugs and birds and everything were flying around. Like, what the hell? And that was a very memorable moment because I've never seen that before. It was so crazy. Well, we'll go back into our PowerPoint and let Gavin continue.
That's all right. I don't know where we're at. I'm talking about the ranges. You can see that where we are right now. There's the art series. We're talking about the prelude. The prelude you're drinking right now. This wine at $35 to $40 is, really sits up there on the world stage. As I said, it's not like you're getting a shabby wine by drinking a winery's second label here. This is really a vineyard that they source for their art series. I know that one of the other participants bought a case of that. Well, this comes from about 40% of this wine comes from the same vineyard block that the art series comes from. It's really made in the same way. There's probably just less new oak. It's about the only difference here on this wine. It's and it's sort of always a little more forward, and just it drinks wonderfully in its first 1 or 2 years of release, whereas the art series, even after a few years, needs some time. So it's hope you enjoy it. It's and thanks for having me on, Ian. It's been great.
Thank you, Gavin. It's drinking beautifully, and I just love the texture, the way it penetrates. It's just got like 1 foot in the new world with a little bit of ripeness, and 1 foot in the old world with amazing acidity. And there's just something so artist serious about it. It's got that just really a beautiful combination and balance.
Yeah, I really like where they're 19. They're really hit it with the 18. I think you've got there is drinking very well.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys. We're going to move to some Pinot Noir. We're going to go up and over to New Zealand. Not actually up, just over to New Zealand. Staying very close to the South Pole still. And let's go right into our PowerPoint and take a look there. And I believe we have the winemaker joining us again. Sam, are you there?
I am. You do indeed. Good day,
Awesome,
Ian.
man. Good day to you. What time is it in New Zealand?
We've just gone 3 p.m.
Well, thanks for being on the Zoom. This is a real treat. Sam is quite adept at this, and he gave us an incredible lesson earlier today. So great to have you back. And this time we're tasting the Reserve, Sam.
That's it. We've stepped it up a level for you fine folks out there. 7 p.m. Well, probably 8 p.m. there for you. So it's time to really bring out the big guns, as we say. So yes, let's dive into it, shall we?
Go for it, buddy.
Cool. So where are we now? We are in Amersfield. What you see, the slide in front of you, is our vineyard. So we are located in the southern part of the South Island of New Zealand. So where we started off with Tamra in Marlborough and the northeast side of the South Island, we come straight down, run through the middle of the spine of the Southern Alps of the South Island, and you can find us where that little pin is that says Amersfield Vineyard. So we are tucked in a basin that's formed from glacial movement over time. We have ranges on either sides of us. We have flowing rivers and deep, deep blue lakes. It's a pretty spectacular part of the world, and we feel very fortunate to be making wine here, along with living and doing other things.
How deep is that lake?
Hundreds of meters. I tried diving there, held my breath, it didn't get very far.
Damn, that's cool.
Yeah. So Amersfield itself began in 1988, which, if you look at the history of Central Otago producers, is relatively old. And I'll put this in context. Grapes were first made and grown, and wine was first produced in the 1860s in Central Otago. There was a big gold rush that happened in various parts of Central Otago, and you had lots of different immigrants coming out, striking their luck, and they brought with them, European influences, being wine and whatnot. So the first grapes were actually grown in the 1860s, but then it sort of fell by the wayside, and it wasn't really until the 1970s, going into the 80s, where vineyards started to be planted again. And then it was the mid-1990s, really, that there was the big boom that happened for Central Otago for grape growing. So in 1988, that puts us, one of the early adopters of the second wave of grape growing in Central Otago. We are based in a sub-region called Pisa, which is roughly halfway between Cromwell to the south and Wanaka to the north. And this is a special little microclimate zone where you have north-south facing rows, and you have the sun that rises in the east, and you get full day morning sun going into the afternoon, and then it taps behind a mountain range, so you don't get cooked in the afternoon with intense heat. So where we sit with 200 hectares of land, we have 92 of them under vine. Of those 92 hectares, predominantly we're planted in Pinot Noir, with the remaining varietals being aromatic varieties such as Sauvignon Blanc. We do a little bit of Chardonnay, Chenin Blanc, Riesling, and Pinot Gris. So we've got the ability to grow lots of different grape varieties in a single vineyard estate. And that's due to numerous factors, one being clonal selection, and the other being slightly raised terraces that stagger up as you go from the riverbed up to the foothills of the mountains. And then throughout that transition from the lower lands up, we've got different soil types that cross through the estate, and those different soil types combined with elevation and clonal selection allow us to grow a vast variety of grapes that really showcase, I guess, what Central Otago has in terms of intensity, power, but real precision as well, and tight acidity. We are very proudly organic. We have gone through a transitional period beginning in 2013, where we made the call that, what do we want to do? Preserve the land. What do we want to do to ensure our workers are coming to work and they're not working with pesticides and synthetic fertilizers and chemicals? What do we want to do to create an environment where the grapes will really thrive and flourish? And as Tamara said beforehand, what you see with organically grown fruit is a toughness and a resilience to them, and there's a thickness in skins, and there's a tannin that just you can't put your finger on until you've tasted it out in the vine coming from organically grown fruit. So that is a combination of philosophies, wanting to do the right thing for the people in the vines, wanting to do the right thing by the wines, meant that organics was a natural progression for us. And this year, 2021, is the first year that we're 100% certified organic in the vineyard and also certified organic in the winery. So that's been a pretty monumentous achievement for the team to get there. As you're rolling through, we've got sustainability, and that forms, again, part of the overall view and mindset that we have about looking after the land, and really, I guess, leaving it in a better place than when we found it. The wine that you've got in front of you at the moment is our 2018 Breakneck Reserve Pinot Noir. The name Breakneck comes from a gorge and a gully that's up behind the winery on the hill. And it's called Breakneck because it goes down and then up. It's very steep. So if you're walking down it and then you start walking up it, you're basically breaking your neck just trying to look up to see where you can go and take the next step. It's a long way to fall down as well. So that's where the name Breakneck comes from. What Breakneck is for us is it's the epitome of what our single vineyard estate offers as a Pinot Noir. So it's a barrel by barrel selection of the best barrels that represent the best sites and the best blocks within the estate. So we're not hamstrung into going down one particular path, saying the reserve has to come from this particular block or that particular block here. We're given the freedom to watch the wines evolve over the aging in oak, and then make a call on what barrels will then form our ultimate estate reserve. 18 was a slightly warmer year than normal. If you have a look at recent vintages, 2017 was very cold. 2019 was a return to normal. 2020 was a cool vintage again. And 2018 was a slightly warmer one. So we had flowering a couple of weeks earlier, and then that heat continued throughout the growing season, right through until harvest. So what we had was this lovely accumulation of phenolic ripeness and flavour intensity. And one of the good things about Central Otago is you've got a semi-continental climate. So within our site, within the Central Otago, you don't have the mediating effect that you get when you're close to the coast. So you have these high temperature differences between day and night. And what happens is during the day you get nice heat, and then during the night the temperatures cool right off and it gets really cold. And that's really important for maintaining natural acidity in the wines. So in a warmer growing season, yes, we got that phenolic ripeness and it was great, and it's bursting with fruit intensity and flavor intensity, but then that's cut by the natural acidity that stays in the grapes. So the fruit's all hand harvested for this wine. We cold soak it. It's warmed up for a natural ferment in open top stainless steel tanks and also open top oak cuvées. We gently macerate the fruit through a series of either plunging or gentle pump overs. Time on skins to extract flavour and anthocyanins and tannin varies depending on the parcels of fruit. Some will leave on skins and tank for 30 days. Others will press off early to retain freshness and brightness and give it that little pop of intensity. Once it's pressed off, it will go to oak, and it spends 16 months in tight grain French oak, of which 30% is new. And what we really see, particularly in this region that we're living and working in and growing in, is really dark fruits, quite plush, soft, silky tannins with an underlying savoury tone that comes through it, with lovely structure to match. And it's a wine that really, it's got longevity in it. It's got the ability to age. We've done vertical tastings and gone back and looked at earlier vintages, and there's real pedigree to the wine and to the estate, which is promising. But it's a 10-year plus wine easily.
Well, the gang's got it in the glass. Anybody have any questions or comments about this beautiful Pinot? Hale, you got a fire update for us?
Yeah, well, I have a fire update, but I'm really liking this Pinot. I mean, when I generally think of Otago, I'm thinking, really, lean, Pinot. But I guess you said that 2018 was a pretty rich year for you guys, and it's lovely. I mean, if I had a blind, I'm not sure if I'd say Otago, honestly, because it's a little bit richer and darker, than what I normally associate with, Otago Pinot. I'd love to hear what Sam has to say about that.
Yes, I think in general, you can look at Central Otago Pinot, and it tends to be a darker, powerful wine, and it's fruit forward, and it's laden with complexity and different layers on it. But they're always quite restrained at the same time, and it's a bit of an oxymoron, and it's something that's a little bit difficult to get your head around, because you look at the wine and you think it's really big, and then it suddenly tapers off and becomes a little bit more sinewy. Within Central Otago, I guess you've got different sub-regions as well. You've got cooler areas like Gibbston Valley, closer to Central Otago, and then closer to Queenstown. And then you've got Wanaka as well, which is a little bit cooler. And then you've got the warmer sites, such as Bendigo, which is basically straight across from us, but catches all day sunshine. And then Bannockburn to the south, which are definitely warmer sites. I mean, you can grow and ripen Syrah and Bendigo at the moment. That's sort of that's where it's heading in terms of its heat profile and soil profile over there. So where we sit, we are sort of somewhere in the middle of the cooler zones and the warmer zones. So we are able to get lovely flavor development and intensity, but also not blow out and become jammy.
Cool. Well, Sam, I want to thank you for your time. We're running a little bit long, so
well, one quick question, Sam.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it, fan.
The one thing I'll say about it, I love the structure. I love the way that you built the wine. I mean, to me, it just seems a little young. I mean, I'd like to test it in a few years. I feel like there's parts of the wine they're trying to connect that aren't quite there yet. I feel like it'll get there, but at the end of the day, it's the building blocks are there, but it's not to where it needs to be yet.
Yeah, and that's a good point to make as well. We're not making wines that will come out and hit you and be.
I feel like that's part of it,
and then fall over in a year's time. So yeah. I totally agree. It's got some structure to it. It's got the building blocks, and see that in 3 years' time, and it's going to be singing.
I agree.
Yeah.
Maybe Van, thank you so much for that comment. We just sent out the email. If you look in your email, you should see it now. If you don't, you can email me with a special discount code. I'm just kind of showing it to you. 4 of the wines are available on our website, and then both Kale and Amsfield are able to ship you directly, and everyone's giving you 20% off tonight. So jump in there and grab whatever you like. There's some really good values there. You can do that at any time. You got till tomorrow night to take advantage of the discount. So Sam, thank you very much for.
Thank you, Sam. It's a wonderful wine.
Will you send me the link?
Thank you. Yeah.
Cheers, Ian. Cheers, guys.
Pleasure, guys.
Enjoy.
Thank you so much. We will now be heading over to Australia. And Daniel, I see you there waiting patiently.
Oh, bro.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Ian. How you going?
Fantastic, sir. How are you?
Well, thanks.
Excellent. Let me give you
move myself out of the sun a little bit.
Let me see here. Boom. And you are in charge there.
Thank you very much.
All right. So I've got a slideshow ready for you.
Right. Hi, everyone.
Where are you sitting today? Are you in Heathcote?
I was in Heathcote yesterday. Today I'm in Melbourne. We're also battling the challenges of lockdown, so movements a little bit challenging, but the Wi-Fi connection in Melbourne's a little bit more stable than it is in Heathcote, so I thought we might be safer to keep a more consistent connection from my backyard here in Melbourne.
Awesome. And we'll show on a map where the wines are coming from here, but really excited to be able to talk to you about this beauty, and I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, sure. So we're in Heathcote, which is part of the state of Victoria, and Victoria's the southern end of the eastern seaboard of Australia. It's quite a small state, but very diverse in terms of viticulture. There's over 20 different wine regions within Victoria. There's a map of the region there that we might just talk about for a minute. So if you're looking at that map of Australia first and foremost, down in the sort of bottom corner there, you can see the state of Victoria that's shaded in grey. Heathcote's about 2 hours north of Melbourne, and that map on the central part of the screen there shows the Heathcote region in its entirety. So the region's about 80 kilometres from the southern end to the northern end. We're in a little township called Tulane, and most of the producers in the Heathcote region have vineyards planted on either side of the Mount Camel Range. So the Mount Camel Range runs from the township of Heathcote up through to the north, effectively the top end of that map there, and it's formed by a greenstone rock formation that was pushed up over 500 million years ago, and produces these amazing weathered red clay soils that are fantastic for viticulture. So we've been, and I think maybe on the next slide they might show a map of, so it's an ugly map, but it's relevant in the context of showing different wine regions throughout Victoria. That purple squiggle that you see right through the middle of the map there shows the Great Dividing Range, which runs down the eastern side of Australia and then cuts across through the middle of Victoria. And it has a massive influence on the wine regions of Victoria. So vineyards and wine regions to the south of that Great Dividing Range, that purple line running through, are much more sort of cooler climates. So some great regions for growing Chardonnay and Pinot. And then on the northern side of the Great Dividing Range, where we are, is much more of an inland continental climate. So much warmer. Our climate's not dissimilar to parts of the Rhone Valley, and for us, that's been a big inspiration for the varieties that we've planted on our vineyard, and Shiraz being certainly a big focus there. So we've also planted some Italian varieties, Neridavla and Fiano. So we're basically choosing varieties that work well in warmer climates. That rock that you can see there on the screen, that's the greenstone rock that I mentioned. So this the Mount Camel Range that runs through the middle of the Heathcote region was formed by a volcanic thrust 500 million years ago that pushed up this greenstone rock. As it's weathered away, it's produced these amazing rich red soils that are very much like a red clay. When they're wet, they're very tacky and sticky like a clay, but they're quite permeable and friable. So the soil moisture can track very deep into the subsoil. So the soil is often challenging for shallow rooted plants, but for deep rooted vines, it's brilliant because the vines can penetrate their roots really deep into the subsoil to get a much more consistent source of moisture, which is great for vine health. And we have a relatively low rainfall throughout the growing season, so it can be quite warm. It can be very dry. So the vines do rely on that subsoil moisture for vine health and keeping consistency. In terms of,
is that iron in the soils that makes it red like that?
yeah, there is a very high iron content in the soil, and you're seeing a lot of the reds in particular, and with our Shiraz and Shiraz from the Heathcote region that's grown on these red soils, you see a really distinctive minerality character that comes through the wines, and a lot of that is influenced by these red soils. So there's a few producers that are off the red soil, and you can see a real distinctive difference between that minerality coming through the red soils. So this is a schematic view of our vineyard. We've got 200 acres of land in total, about 80 acres under vine. About 50 of that is Shiraz, and the L-shaped block on the right of your screen, we call our 03 block, is the vineyard that we source the fruit for our Tranda Shiraz. Primarily the top section of that block and the bottom section that's got the shorter rows. So that was a block that we planted in 2003, and has consistently produced great fruit over many years. The 2017 Tranda Shiraz that we're trying tonight, this is the 9th vintage that we've made this wine. We make it in a style where it's medium to full bodied. So if for those of you who may not have tried a Heathcote Shiraz, but you may have tried, say, a Barossa or a McLaren Vale Shiraz, Heathcote's not quite as warm as Barossa and McLaren Vale, but we are a warmer climate, so we get that intensity of flavour, great fruit flavour intensity, without being too heavy. So this is a wine that we're looking to build complexity, structure, and whilst it's a fairly small block, the block itself is only 13 acres, and we're picking primarily for the Tranda Shiraz from the top of the hill and the bottom shorter rows. We do a lot of small batches, and that enables us to work with different components. So some components will be on skins for a couple of weeks. Some components will be on skins for sort of up to 7, 8, or even 9 weeks. We're looking at different layers of tannins. So we want this wine to be expressive as a young wine. So it's now 4 years old, still showing really good fruit, and that'll carry through for up to sort of 8, 9, 10 years. But we try and make it in a style where it will evolve in the cellar rather than demand time in the cellar. So you can ideally enjoy it at different stages of its life and its evolution, and see those fruit characteristics settle down over time, and the secondary characteristics come through to provide more complexity.
I love the state that it's in right now. It's got, I think, in a blind tasting, I wonder how many people would even put it in Australia. It's got a wonderful balance between earth and fruit, and I think I'd immediately start to think that maybe I'm somewhere in the Rhone, and it's because of that nature. But there's just a really wonderful depth to it. There's quality marks all over the place on this thing, and it's really well done. I'm really loving it. Tonight it's just showing so well, and I think you didn't get our little jars because I couldn't get them there overnight to Australia, but we poured these yesterday. Most people got them delivered today, and we fill them all the way to the top, and all the wines are showing great, but this wine really benefits with a little bit of decantation and just
Sure.
continues to evolve here, and it's just showing super well. So I think you've got a lot to be proud of there. And you guys have a little food program here. Do you have a restaurant as well?
Yeah, so we had a really small cellar door that that we worked with for about 8 years, and then 2 years ago we knocked that down and built a brand new cellar door that we opened about 14 months ago, right in the middle of a pandemic, which has been challenging. But when Melbourne and Victoria are out of lockdown, we've found that the traffic's been fantastic, and we work with a lot of local suppliers and local growers to get some local produce. We do cheese platters, charcuterie platters, and all of that's all sourced locally. You sit on the deck there and look out to the north, sort of up the hill. You can see the Mount Camel Range at the top of our property, and that's our O2 block straight ahead. To sort of the left of the screen is the O3 block that forms the source of the Taranto Shiraz. So next time,
the beginning too of the slideshow, because I went through quickly some of these shots, but here's another angle.
Yeah, so this is the top of the ridge line. So the story here is that my dad, who was I think it might have been was it Gavin before that mentioned Australia's ability to do a good boozy lunch. My dad was at a boozy lunch about 20 years ago, and a couple of guys said, "You should come to Heathcote. We're going to buy a block of land." He said, "No, not interested." And by the end of the lunch, he was convinced to go up, walk to the top of the hill, saw this view, and was gone hook, line, and sinker. And it's a beautiful view from around the region. So yeah, we're a family business. That's all of us there. So we work together, and on nights like this, we celebrate together as well. We had a pretty good night at the Heathcote Wine Show just pre-COVID. Picked up a few trophies, which is always fun, and celebrated well.
Excellent. I know you guys.
And my dad.
Yeah, this is Dad right here.
Yeah, my dad Ian, who in his former life as an engineer, started off as a wine enthusiast, but when we bought this block of land nearly 20 years ago, it's become a real passion project, and we've got a terrific team that all work really well together, and Dad gives us the freedom to really run each component of the business as we need to. But he's out there in the vineyard, walking every row, looking at every vine, and making sure that everything's done well as engineers do. Thorough attention to detail.
Nice. And back here on the map, Ryan asked a question: is this area here, are these bush vines?
Yeah. So we've been growing Grenache now for a bit over 10 years, and we planted that little bush vine block about 5 years ago, and you can sort of see on the left of that picture as well, there's another block of bush vine Grenache that we planted about 2 years ago. So yeah, we've got a combination of different setups in the vineyard. We've got a really close planted high density block that you can sort of see in the top right hand corner. That's our Somme block. That's at nearly 9,000 vines a hectare density. 1.6 meter rows, 750 mil vine spacings, 450 mil cordon. And then we've got the bush vine Grenache block that's a bit more spread out. That's at sort of 2 meter centers. And then we've got some close.
I see a little Viognier down here. And Ryan got the name for you guys, Heathcote Roti.
There's been a few plays on that over the years.
Damn it, Ryan, you weren't the first.
No, but we are very inspired by the Rhone Valley, and it was a trip to the Rhone Valley about 7 years ago where my dad was looking for inspiration for this close planter vineyard that actually led to us going down the organics path. So we got our organic certification. What are we now? 2 years ago, but we started farming the vineyard organically about 6-7 years ago, and we're currently the only certified producer in Heathcote, but there's a few others that are practicing organics and moving in that direction. And we think it's a great direction to take, and Heathcote's a great place to grow fruit organically. We've got a fairly considerate climate for organic farming, and we've seen the vines respond really, really well to organic farming since we've implemented it.
Well, just one more plug. We had a couple of really nice press on the earlier Zoom for the trade. Dan Berger, Anthony Diaz-Blue, and they were both waxing poetic about how good the food was when they visited. So we'll have to get down there and get it.
Please do.
Thank you for your time, sir. Our next
My pleasure.
Our next winemaker may want to be one of your customers. He's buying some really nice small lot Grenache from some really cool vineyards. Maybe you could send some up with some dry ice for Cale Anderson. He's going to be our next speaker.
I'll fly them over when we're allowed to fly.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Daniel. Great job. Cale, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm still here, and I've been tasting all these fantastic wines, and this has been an absolute pleasure.
Cool, man. Well, we're gonna finish in the Napa Valley, and I just sourced you some Grenache from Australia.
Fantastic. You know what? Looking out, Ian.
I'm trying. But tell people a little bit about your background, Cale.
Yeah, so like Ian said, and the previous two wines we had, it was the Rhones that got me interested in making wine in the first place. So before I jump into all these stories about myself, I'd like to talk. I've been enjoying all these wines all night, and I would like to talk about each one of these individually because I think they're special in their own different ways. So my first story is about Mary Edwards because when I was a student at UC Davis, Mary Edwards gave a winemaker's a wine barbecue for the students at Davis at the time. And one of those students was me. And she was extremely hospitable, and all of us young kids who didn't know a damn about a single thing, but thought we did, she entertained us as we thought we were making an amazing barbecue, and she poured us a lot of amazing wines. And she was it was an amazing night, and what was it? Oh, it was a dinner. It was dinner under the Winkler vine is what it was. This was, gosh, I'm gonna make everyone's gonna know how old I am. It was 99 and maybe 98. Anyhow, it was an amazing night, and we had a great time. And it's great to hear that Mary is passed the winery down to a family like Roederer who knows how to make really, really good wines as well. So super happy about that.
She had a really good payday too, so that's always the winning story.
Well, as the winemaker's got to have a expiration date, and you need to make sure your legacy is taken care of. So it's good.
And I'm very deserved in her case. This is somebody who had made wine for almost fully 5 decades. So she worked hard at it, but through it all, she was, as you were just describing, with the barbecue, very gracious and very generous to everybody. So thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah, no, she was. Actually, my parents were at that dinner with me, and this is after I had decided to change my major from pre-med to winemaking. And I was trying to convince my parents that winemaking was like actually a real job, and Mary Edwards helped me convince them. So,
Congratulations, doctor.
So anyway, that's sorry, that's a side note. Oh, but you know, when I was the winemaker at Cliff Lady in Stags Leap District, oh my gosh, 05 to 11, we would always have the Mary Edwards Sauvignon Blanc in the competitive set because it was a benchmark for us. So yeah, really, really awesome. So, oh, and there was the Lewin and Gavin. So I'm not sure if Gavin's still on, but Archer, his youngest, and my youngest, Jack, are best of buddies, and we have lots of barbecues in our backyard. So in the Lewin, I mean, you know, so I love the raciness and so fresh, and it's focused. I love that about the Lewin. The Amsfield. Amsfield is that was one of the riper Pinots from Otago that I've had, and I really do like that. I mean, I think that has some really nice international appeal. Delicious. I mean, I've had some Otago Pinots that were like a little too. I'm a California boy, so it's really acidic, but that was not, and I really appreciated that.
Some would say the Amsfield's potentially the best Pinot in New Zealand too, by the way.
Yeah, it was lovely, and it showed really well in these little vials here, which are holding up pretty good. Like I just opened up a 750 next to the of my own wines next to the next to this little guy, and it's pretty representative. So
yeah,
good on you, Ian.
It's a nice decantation, it's what we wanted to do. I mean, it can't be perfect, but it could also go the other way. And we've had really good results. We've been doing this for a year and a half with these same containers. Some people use a little smaller jars with a smaller necks. And I think I would kill myself if I had to fill 3,000 jars with a little teeny neck.
Yeah. Hey, well, that's what winemakers are for.
Yeah. So,
and then the Tellurine, yeah. I mean, I would, if in a blind tasting, that's Rhone to me. I mean, I'm not sure if I could, in a, I don't know, triangle test or whatever. That's it was lovely, and I enjoyed it a lot. Like really nice balance, and I mean, I'd love to visit there one day and go check it out for myself, kind of post COVID, if that ever happens. But anyways, back to myself. So here I go talking about myself. We just crushed the 2021 version today. It's been a long day. Napa, we're much less smoky. However, smoky. There was a fire that happened down today in Carneros, and we called my buddy Chris Hyde, who's down there, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm okay." I guess it was just a brush fire, and the helicopters were going. We're like, oh my god, like, not again, So I think it's put out, but
knocked it down. Good.
Yeah, which is a good thing because we're harvesting the Hyde Syrah on Friday, so make sure it doesn't get too smoky. I mean, it's already started that way, so. Right. No added smoke is better in general, I would say, for the Syrah. But anyways, where was I? So here we are at the 2016 McGaw. This is a long-term project for us. So we started Kale Wines in 2008. Just my wife and I. Those are the two boys. We just took that picture. We actually got to travel and we were like, oh my God, like travel, what is this? So it's like 2 years in the making, traveling,
Where'd you go?
This is in Hawaii, this is in Maui. So I have friends and family in Hawaii, and Kale is a very common name there, which is the inspiration for my label, rather than the vegetable. So so yeah. So this is a bunch of Swirl bouncing down the sorting table and over grades, before going through the optical sorter. Anyways, so this wine is a wine in the making, going back to 2011. So we entered into a pre-plant contract with the McGaw family in Rutherford, which is right next to Beckstoffer George III Vineyard. Oh yeah, there it is right there. A little bit of smoke in the distance. So we entered into a pre-planned contract, which is the only way that we could actually convince anyone in Rutherford to not plant Cabernet Sauvignon. So what we decided to do was, the McGaws luckily would listen to me, and I told them that I would buy their fruit from their property for 10 years. If they planted, the clones and the rootstock and if they did the trellising that I wanted to do, and the, soil preparations and all this kind of stuff. So they did. And we planted their heritage block, which is right there in the right after the lake, right there, to Grenache, Taubles B and Taubles C, Grenache, and Mourvèdre, right there in the middle of Rutherford. So
that's faith when they plant Rhone varieties in Rutherford, man.
No, they apparently thought I knew what I was doing. So so this is the vineyard in the winter. These baby vines. These baby vines are growing up, and we have this wine. So it's basically a field blend, 16% Mourvèdre, 84% Grenache. We do, percentage whole cluster every year, small production. We have about an acre, which, equates to, in any given year, 100, 200 cases. So it's a fun thing. We planted it all, bush vine style, like they did at Tellurian and other places. It's a very upright grower, and the Mourvèdre is a very upright grower. So we did the same thing, kind of bush vine, kind of top knotted it where, if they got a little bit too vigorous, but we're having really good results with it. We make this wine, the red wine, from this block, and we also make the rosé from the top cluster. So part of the pre-planned contract was that I take the top cluster basically at 20 bricks, where we would normally green drop, take it for rosé. Press it so it's really low alcohol, fermented in concrete, and make our rosé out of it, kind of Provençal style, and then do the bottom cluster for the red, and that helps also concentrate the red fruit and the concentration of the red wine.
The red grapes get picked about 2 months later, I think you said.
Yeah, about 2 months later. Yeah. So it's kind of a it's a fun project. It started, these vines are getting older now, which is really exciting. Because the vineyard is almost in full production, and vascular system is built up, and
you might actually be able to make 200 cases.
Maybe one day. Yeah. Yeah, no, that would be amazing. But oh wow, this picture is a Kick Ranch. So so this picture is another red blend that we make. So you see all the fog moving through there. That's the Petaluma wind gap. You're looking down in Fountain Grove District AVA, looking south towards Bennett Valley, right there. And this is basically the west side of Spring Mountain, so really rocky, really volcanic. I grew up a quarter mile away from here. My parents are on the next hillside. And then and here's a picture of Stagecoach Vineyard, another red blend that we make. See the big pile of rocks in the center there. That's all the rocks are excavated from Atlas Peak. This is looking west towards the Mayacamas Range, about 1,500, maybe 1,700 feet elevation. Most of everything that you see in this picture is cab, except my little block, which is right underneath that big pile of rocks right there. That's the Sarason the Grenache for the broken axle blend that we do. Yeah, beautiful site.
The Stagecoach is crazy. These stones are everywhere.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, there's each one of those stones. It's kind of, you can't really see it in this picture, but each one of those stones is basically like a limo. There's a lot of limos piled on top of it.
I like the quote that you said earlier. What was it? My mind grows grapes or something.
Oh yeah. So this is Jan Krupp, the previous owner of Stagecoach, before he sold recently. But he has the most expensive mine that grows grapes. A lot of rocks. I mean, all the soil up here is really geologically really young. So all those volcanics are really young and really red iron soil. So and then here's a picture of the punch down. You see some white grapes in there. So we do a lot of co-fermentation with Viognier, kind of traditional Rhone style. It adds a little bit of complexity to what we do, and nose and texture. So we went through all the things. So cheers to everybody. Thanks so much for sticking with me to the very end.
Thank you for sticking around. And is the correct pronunciation of your name Calais?
So no, I've always been Kale. My mother calls me Kale, just like the vegetable. But my mother lived in Hawaii for a long time, almost a decade, and Calais is a very common name there. So that was the inspiration for the name, but I've always been Kale.
Got it. Well, that was funny. That's cool. And really a pleasure to meet you and to taste your beautiful wine. And thanks for the overview of the others too, as we were able to get the wines to Kale up in Napa. And I hope that that fire is not a news flash tomorrow.
I was on Cal Fire Twitter, so it looks like we're good. So thank God. I mean, we're harvesting like I said, the Hyde Syrah on Friday, and we went through the ringer last year, so not interested in going down that route again.
Very good. And how many total wines are you making?
Well, for Kale wines, we're making a rosé, and we're making 3-4 different red blends. But now I brought on a new investor in January, and we're starting to make some vineyard designated shards and cabs going forward. So,
cool.
But for the consulting business, we make a lot of cab, and I make wines for a lot of different wineries. Chateau Patel, Trinitas Winery, Longfellow Wines, Napa Koshu LLC. So we're making a lot of different wines in Napa, Sonoma these days. But today we're showcasing the Kale wines.
That's awesome. Well, the code lets you buy the wine directly from his winery, and also you can get the wines for all the clients tonight are available there on that email. So check that out and grab the wines over the next day. You're gonna buy some wine anyway. Support these guys, and make sure you check out the auction site that we have. We definitely have some nice items on the auction. The auction will stay open until tomorrow night as well. And each of the wineries will be shipping the auction item to you within 7 days. That's our ask to the wineries to get those out. And we want to thank all of our lovely peeps for joining us tonight, and all the winemakers for being here as well. We have been doing these STARS events for now over a year on Zoom, and I continue to do Zoom into Wine every Wednesday night. Different topicality every Wednesday, different wines, whether you buy the wines or just watch the Zoom for free. I just want to stay out there with you guys, and we're starting to do a couple of live events. We did a very fun dinner. People were ready to rock and roll at the dinner the other night. We're going to have another dinner on October 17th, Alexander Steakhouse in Pasadena. And it's a beautiful, I do a lot of private seller consultation. I even help people sell some wine. And I have a client that lives in Florida, and they have a lot of wine here in California. And he's figured out how much wine he really wants to own. So I'm helping move some of that out. And the most efficient way to do that is to show some at the dinner and let you guys buy it from him. So if you guys want to see what's in his cellar available for sale, there's about 50 amazing Napa Valley collectibles. We're going to taste 12 of them at the dinner. And as that dinner audience grows, we'll add a few more wines too. We have some really fun events on the website. Just going to take you there for a second and show it to you. And we have our Stars of Wine website, which we could go to, and you can see all the upcoming Stars events. We just, of course, finished this one, so we move right into October, and we usually only do one event a month, but October is also Merlot month, and the Merlot folks got a little envious and said, we got to do a Merlot event. So we're going to do 2 events in October. Chile versus Argentina versus California. Check out the wineries that are coming from Chile and Argentina. Really, really cool stuff. If you like tonight, it's going to be very similar at this event, because we're going to go and have producers in different countries. It's going to be really great. And then the Merlot tasting ended up being ridiculous, because they came to us, and the number of $75, $125, and $200 bottles of Merlot that we're going to show. This Sullivan's $250. This is $80 from Melka. This is the classic Duckhorn, the Ariata wine from Fritz and Karen Hayton. This really, really cool lineup of Merlots. You will fall in love with Merlot again. The True Shards down in Carneros, super cool. It looks like Rutherford Hill is now in the lineup as well. So really great tasting. If you want to join these, we have early bird pricing. Sometimes we even have extra early bird pricing. We call it egg pricing. So you might want to get involved early just by looking at the Stars of Wine calendar here. And now we have a master calendar that shows all of our Zooms and everything in one spot, whether it's one of our wine classes like Wine Camp or any of our Wednesday tastings. We've got a champagne event coming up. We're promoting the LA Magazine food event out in Malibu, which will be really fun. Outdoors, big tasting, lots of space, lots of oxygen. And then the dinners right here, Alexander Steakhouse is here as well. Some good news happened for our trip to Italy. Of course, we're going to Piedmont at the end of November for our truffle session. This one is sold out, but we do have a couple of spots remaining for Tuscany. If anybody wants to come with us, we're going to go hang out with the amazing butcher. What's my butcher's name? Can't remember right now. I was going to say Mario Batali, but that's not him. And then we're going down to Montepulciano, Brunello de Montalcino. We're going to finish up at Ornellaia, Sassicaia, and Maceto on Thursday. So pretty awesome trip. Nice accommodations everywhere we go. Really, really amazing food commitments as well. So that's just a little look into the future. I want to thank you guys for joining us again.
Thank you, Ian.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Ian.
Good night.